Hello everyone, welcome back to Allcarnews, and you join us here today with now the second Stellantis large architecture EV on the channel, the all-new Jeep Wagoneer S. Now this is the second model year actually of the Wagoneer S. There was a 2024, this is a 2025, and we still have the launch edition model available, so we're getting a fully loaded futuristic Jeep electric SUV. And to be completely honest, over the course of this entire week, this vehicle has actually impressed in some ways, but in other ways it still has me scratching my head as to what this vehicle is exactly supposed to be and who is it exactly being marketed towards. So in this video, I hope to answer a lot of those questions, as well as take you on a full in-depth tour and review of all of its features, how it is like to live with on a daily basis, how is the range, how is the battery, the driving experience. We're gonna dive into all that stuff, so stay tuned, let's go dive in. So guys, what's under the hood? Well, since it's the Stellantis large architecture, it actually is capable of being both gas and EV, as we are seeing with the upcoming Dodge Charger 6-pack, as well as the full EV Daytona. But I believe Jeep is only going to be using this vehicle as a pure EV, as we do have a front trunk up here. It is a little bit on the smaller side, but I am glad they were still able to put a front trunk up here. But that brings us to what's going on under the skin of this vehicle, because it is honestly making some pretty impressive power numbers. Now, this one is making a whopping 600 horsepower and around 617 pound-feet of torque. That is where that S comes in the Wagoneer S nameplate here. This is a really, really quick vehicle. 0 to 60 miles an hour happens in around 3.4 to 3.5 seconds. In a Jeep SUV that weighs around 5,700-ish pounds. Pretty wild stuff there. Now, how this works is around 100 kilowatt hour gross battery pack, around 93, 94-ish kilowatt hours is usable. EPA rates the range just around 300 miles, and over the course of this week of testing, I've actually gotten around 285-ish miles actually out of it, and it honestly feels like it keep going. Efficiency numbers have been really, really impressive. My average over the course of this week on my own trip was around 4.4 to 4.5 miles per kilowatt hour. Whether I can fully trust this whole system, I'm not too certain. We'll get to that in a little bit, but overall, it's actually been pretty good in terms of range. Power is pretty wild as well, but we'll get into the true nature of that in the driving dynamics portion of this video. Let's go talk about charging now. Okay guys, we're sitting here, and I just noticed this as the screen is actually in front of us. Our miles per kilowatt hour average efficiency has been gradually increasing since we've been sitting here on my trip that I've set. I'm not too sure why it's doing this. Maybe because I turned the vehicle on so we can use our massage and AC, because it is a little toasty out today. But I'm not sure if it's going based off the charging, based off time, but there's no reason that I think this should be increasing its efficiency while we're sitting here not moving. Look, it's just doing it right now actually. So. Now over here on the back of our driver's side is where we're going to find our charge port door. No power operation here. We would just simply press and it opens up with this very large charge door over here. Then we can find our, of course, level 2 charger. This vehicle can charge up to around 11 kilowatts on level 2 charging, which is pretty quick actually. And we also have our CCS for our DC fast charging at around 203 kilowatts, which is actually pretty quick. 20 to 80% happens at around 25 to 30-ish minutes, which really isn't that bad at all. And since this is a very similar architecture to the one we just tested in the Dodge Charger Daytona EV, otherwise, it could also tow around 3,400 pounds, which isn't the most for a Jeep, but it can still tow just a little bit if you do need it to. So we really do need to talk about the styling on this thing, because I do genuinely think the Wagoneer S lineup looks quite good. It almost looks like a Jeep from the future, but this also brings me down to the question of what is this vehicle sort of trying to be? And what I've boiled it down to is picture the luxuriousness of the Wagoneer lineup and picture the more road-like, a little bit sportier, a little bit more dynamic versions of the regular Jeep lineup kind of mashed together, and all of that essence is in this vehicle. It really is a mashup of every piece of like the Jeep brand, as well as some new stuff. It's almost like, to me, a crossover coupe version of a Grand Cherokee in my head, and it honestly is quite like that, as the roof does slant down so aggressively far back, even though we have that wing kind of hiding that roof line there. And in terms of styling, we do see a lot of stuff brought down from all of the Jeep identities. So we have that signature 7-slot style grille, though of course there is no opening here as it is fully electric. And we do have this massive front light bar, which also has this really cool cascading light effect underneath this area over here where it kind of makes up the grille. Really, really cool design at night. I think that looks nice. Full LED headlights. We have LED fog lights down there as well, which are really fantastic. And the whole front end is actually very smooth to make this the most efficient and most aerodynamically efficient vehicle Jeep has ever made, with a 0.29 drag coefficient, which is pretty good for a big SUV. And you can honestly feel that out on the road. It coasts really well on the highway, actually. It feels like it's just gliding through the air. Now, coming over to the side of the all-new Jeep Wagoneer S, we're gonna find body painted color over here for our fender area. So this is nice how it's not plastic, it's just body colored black over there, which I do like. We have a Wagoneer badge on the side of the doors on either side, of course, which is quite nice. And then we come over to the wheel and tire combination here. So we have square tires all around. They're all 235 20-inch wheels on this one. We're all rocking this Falcon tire on here. And I think the wheel design is actually quite nice overall. It's a full blacked out aero style wheel design. But what I do have some issues with are these tires. I just don't think they are the right tire for this vehicle. It almost feels like it's asking for, especially with something with 600 horsepower and the amount of stuff they've thrown onto the car. It feels like it needs a little bit of a wider tire, and something needs to be worked out in this section, even with the braking as well. We'll get to this in the driving portion, but how the brakes and the regen kind of blend together can be a little bit funky sometimes, and the regen just needs a little bit more time in the oven to perfect, I think, a little bit more. But overall, I think this wheel package is fine. I would definitely like to see a different tire on here. Suspension itself as well isn't too advanced or anything crazy going on. We don't have any sort of adaptive damper. I think that would have been really nice to see on this vehicle to really switch up the driving style, especially with how much performance this thing is capable of as well. But this is still early on in the Wagoneer S lineup, as this is also an all-new ground-up architecture, so I'm sure Jeep and Stellantis Group will be working on a lot of these things going forward. Now, I do also want to take a moment to talk about this side profile of the all-new Wagoneer S, because it really is quite interesting. We have this really colossal wing back here, which the glass itself blends right back into, and this is why I say it's almost like a BMW X6 version, or that crossover coupe style version of a Grand Cherokee, because remove this wing and you'll see the actual roofline is way, way, way more raked than it actually looks because of the styling element of the wing here. Now, we also don't have a rear wiper, but because of the aerodynamics, I really haven't noticed an issue with that. And we also have a digital rear view mirror with this camera mounted right up here, so the view from that is actually quite good. And back here as well, we get a full LED light bar, which I think looks just okay. I think they could have done something a little bit wilder back here. That would have been cool. Now, popping open our trunk over here, of course, we do have a power tailgate, which is nice. Variety of ways we can open this as well. And storage is decent, I would say, on the vehicle. We have around 30 to 31 cubic feet with the rear seats up. This is a optional little kind of cargo net here, which and its application is a little funky. You kind of hook it into here and then hook it to the back of the seats, but it kind of falls sometimes like it's doing right now. But otherwise, that's about the amount of space we're getting back here. We do have not much, honestly, back here. I don't even appear to see any sort of LED lights, though we do get a 12-volt socket. Looking under the floor, we do have a nice little Easter egg there, and popping this open, we have a little bit more storage underneath the floor, though there is a really big subwoofer underneath there for our Macintosh audio system. Decent amount of cargo space, but I will say that this opening is a little bit compromised because of this roof line. You can kind of see that right here. Instead of like, a Grand Cherokee where this opening is like right up here and much more boxy, this is a definitely more raked style rear tailgate section, so definitely consider that if you want to carry much taller objects more frequently in this vehicle. Okay, everyone, let's go have a look at the rear seats of our Jeep Wagoneer S. And one thing I really like about these doors actually is they open so wide, almost a full 90-degree angle. And since this is pretty much one of the lowest Jeep products ever with around 6.4 inches of ground clearance, you really don't have to really step into the vehicle. So you can see how easy it is to get in and out of here. Hopping in the rear seats here, here. Quick look at this really cool door panel. We have the upgraded red interior option, which gets you red leather and nice contrasting stitching, but literally everything on the door card is red. Up here we have soft touch material, harder plastics down here, including our Macintosh speaker system. I'm surprised they didn't do metal with this, but we do have a cup holder area over here, electronic door release in the back, but there doesn't seem to be an emergency switch anywhere in the back seats, only on the front. And we have some nice metal trim up here and really cool ambient lighting. Let's hop inside. Like I said, getting in and out is incredibly easy on this vehicle. Let's see if we have a nice solid door thunk here. All new platform, pretty solid door thunk actually, so I'm going to give that a good rating there. I like the nice privacy glass, really huge rear windows, I do have to say, but there's no sort of sunshade at all in this particular vehicle. One thing that's a little bit tight back here is legroom is actually a little bit smaller than what you're going to find in a Grand Cherokee. I believe around 1 inch smaller legroom back here, which is interesting. We do have storage cubbies back here that are made out of the same leather material that we find on our seats. Same thing with the back of the passenger seat as well. And since we have the fully loaded launch edition still, even for 2025, we do get heated and ventilated seats back here, which is a nice touch actually, so that's really cool. And the upgraded 115 volt AC outlet in the back here if you want to plug in some things, as well as 2 illuminated USB-C ports and our own air vents back here, which is a very nice touch. So all of this is really nice to see. The floor is also relatively pretty flat for a Jeep as well, so there's not a lot of humps you need to kind of step over in the center seat. Seats themselves are okay, I would say. I would like a little bit more thigh support. I do feel pretty low in the vehicle in this car. I don't feel like I'm sitting up that much, but it's overall pretty comfortable. Good amount of depth. Back support's pretty nice as well. We do also have a folding center console over here with 2 cup holders as well, which is a nice touch. And overall, I think it's a pretty spacious back seat. I believe we can fold the seats down, but we cannot recline them, it doesn't appear. So maybe a little bit of some reclining adjustment via back here. You can see a little bit, but not too much of an adjustment. Now, one thing to talk about back here, though, that could impact some people is headroom. So as you guys can see, this is a sloping rear roofline. It goes very steeply far back there. So if you are a little bit taller, I would say over 6 feet tall, actually, since I am 6 feet tall, I only have about a ½ inch of headroom right here, putting my head back. So that's how steep this headroom kind of comes off in the back of the vehicle. So that's something to keep in mind. I will try to get this on camera for you guys. You can see how close this top headrest is to this kind of slant in the roof back here. And this is mostly because of the aerodynamic shape of the vehicle, but also we have this massive panoramic glass roof, which does have a sunshade and it opens and it does let a lot of light into the cabin, but it does impede a little bit on headroom. Now we also do have hooks over here as well as a little grab handle, and we do have LED lights in the back of this interior as well for some additional lighting. And again, the ambient lighting back here is actually quite tasteful, but I think the real cool piece of this interior has to be up front as it draws from its bigger brother, the Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer. Opening up the door, same treatment on the door panels as well, and these seats are actually quite nice. We do have plenty of adjustment on them, which is really cool. So we have side bolster adjustment, lumbar support, thigh support, full power, so they're 12-way power front, driver and passenger seats. They also look quite nice as well. Let's hop inside. Also peek this little cool little Easter egg on the side panel over there for the Wagoneer. And we'll also note we have the emergency release on these front doors over here. Pretty solid door thunk there, and you can hear how instantly quiet it gets in this vehicle. There is plenty of sound insulation actually, so you can't hear that bird chirping anymore, for example. Pretty thick glass all around us. And to power on our Wagoneer S, we do actually have a power button located right here in the center console. So you put your foot on the brake, press this little button here. A courtesy wipe that comes on there. These are kind of nice buttons. We have power and auto, all 4 windows. We have folding mirrors as well, which is nice. Memory seats over here. We can see this nice aluminum trim on the side, which carries throughout the entirety of this wild looking dashboard in this interior. Some gloss black plastic in here, but I do like how we have a stitched upper dash portion, very slim and trim air vents throughout the top over here as well. And let's start off with this steering wheel. So it's very, very unique. We have contrasting stitching on it. I think it's actually quite nice overall. I don't really have any complaints with it. No paddle shifters, though we do have our volume and track forward and reverse on the back of there. And again, we have this one stalk here for our turn indicators as well as wiper controls. All of our lighting controls have been moved to these buttons over here, and we do have a release for our front trunk, which is a nice, easy, convenient location for all this stuff, even though you do have to press really hard on some of the buttons. You can't just soft press it. You really got to press into it to actually get it to work. So that was one thing I noted this week. Buttons on the steering wheel work totally fine. I'm glad they're regular buttons and not gloss black. So over here we have our controls for our digital cluster. Over here we have our controls for our driving assistance system. Now, the next real complaint, which I do believe is a genuine issue, is this heads-up display. It does not come across on camera, but if you go test drive one of these things or see it in person, this has to be one of the smallest font heads-up displays I've ever seen in the industry. It's honestly dangerous, I think, to use because you literally cannot see anything that's being displayed on this heads-up display whatsoever. Now, there are different modes actually for the heads-up display, so I can adjust it from custom, simple, advanced, and standard. So here's what it looks like in simple. Here's standard, and here's the advanced. So for some reason, simple just mildly enlarges our speed, but the rest of them are so tiny, it's just borderline unusable. So I really hope this can be fixed via like a software update or something, because it's just not that simple or easy to use, and it kind of defeats the purpose, in my opinion, of a heads-up display. So coming over to our center console area, here is where we're going to have our latest generation Uconnect 5 system. And now this layout over here, so we have this screen, our lower climate screen, as well as a passenger display over here, very familiar to the rest of the Wagoneer lineup. Even some of the Grand Cherokees can even get this screen on the side over here as an option. Overall, I think this is actually pretty good. We have a lot of physical buttons here, very nice volume knob over here, tune scroll, and this tune scroll can also be used use the infotainment screen when you're in Apple CarPlay, which is pretty cool, almost like an iDrive style controller. We also have somewhat of some haptic buttons over here for our ventilated seats, so 3-stage ventilating, which is nice, and heating, which is nice as well as heated steering wheel here, and a mute switch, though they are a little confusing to press. Sometimes you really got to press in the right spot. Thankfully, we do have buttons still in the screen to control these because I actually prefer to use those. The one thing I will note here is I'm sitting in my driving position, and yeah, you can't see that entire panel right there. You really do have to lean over to actually see anything on this panel right here. So that's a little bit frustrating in some situations, though you may just get used to that stuff and it may not become a problem down the road. Now, I did talk about this panel here, which we saw in the Dodge Charger EV as well. I'm not the biggest fan of how it operates. In bright daylight, these buttons are very, very difficult to see actually, and if they are on, if there's a red light on them, you cannot see it whatsoever. But since we can see it now, it's this haptic touch panel here. Camera screens are pretty good, very clear, crystal clear cameras. I have to say these are actually really good. Just getting to all of your other camera layouts is a little bit clunky sometimes. You can favorite some cameras, so it's a little bit easier to access, though I just wish there was an easier way to kind of access some of those camera systems. And for the parking assist, you have to hold the button the entire time of the parking assist function, which is a little bit frustrating, as I have never experienced that in any other car that has much better parking assist than this. So that is also something to note in this vehicle. Also on this upper dash portion, I will say I do really, really like this trim. This looks very premium and luxurious, as well as this gorgeous ambient lighting in here, which you can adjust. I believe we have 64 color ambient lighting in the vehicle. So it is actually one of my favorite aspects of the car. If you don't get the ambient lighting, I feel like it's going to be a little bit of a missed out experience here. It looks absolutely gorgeous at night. The infotainment system itself, it's Uconnect 5. We've experienced this in a lot of vehicles lately. We have a customizable home screen. You can keep adding widgets there. We have a simple kind of widget bar up here as well, which you can kind of customize all your quick access widgets up here. I like the electric vehicle pages in here. They're actually pretty decent. So we have creep options, regen options. We can see our power flow, drive history, and a whole bunch of other EV information that was missing on the Dodge Charger Daytona EV. Down here in the lower screen section, this is an interesting screen. So you don't get this screen on the limited trim. I believe there may be a package that may allow you to get it, but the one that I saw did not have it. It actually moves up. It's not power. You literally just push it up out of the way. It has a little bit of some squeak to it, but I think it's actually kind of cool because it reveals this massive storage space in here that is felt lined. It goes really deep back, 2 USB-C ports and an HDMI port for your passenger display if you want to plug something in there, and you just pop it down, it slides back down, and it actually works pretty well. And I like how we have a separate screen down here for our climate system. So all of these panels right down here, these buttons will always be your climate controls for your fan speed, temperature, and other stuff. We even have an eco climate control. And one of the best parts about this vehicle has to be the front massage. I've always said this, that Stellantis or FCA, whatever you want to call them, they have the best massage, I think, in vehicles in the market. I don't know what they do. It's just really, really good. It actually feels like you're getting a real massage, unlike unlike some of those other systems that just have lumbar moving in and out. Over here in the center console over here, we have our power switch that we mentioned. I wish this was this like brushed aluminum down here. I think that would really enhance this experience in here even more so, especially since this is an awesome shifter. We've seen this on the Grand Cherokee, actually, I believe, in a different format a little bit, but it is an aluminum shifter. It's solid metal. It glows at night. It looks really cool, and it actually feels kind of nice to use and operate. It doesn't feel cheap or flimsy. I like also how they limited the gloss black plastic over here, so that's pretty good. We also have a drive mode selector here from sand, snow, eco, auto, and sport mode. Sport actually turns off traction control, so that's something to keep aware of. We also have an auto hold button and a hill descent control. Another little minor complaint here are these cup holders. These are the same cup holders that we saw on the Dodge Charger EV, and I think they are terrible. They just don't hold a majority of just bottles or cups or anything unless you have some giant like super gulp from like 7-Eleven. It's just not going to stay put in here, and especially with this little piece over here being open. I guess you're supposed to put a phone here, but they should have put a divider, because we have a phone storage port right here in the center console actually, for our wireless charger, which is actually a great location because it's easy to access, and also really great glove box, really deep, felt lined, and we have some ports in here for charging, which is nice. Also like this armrest. But this just needs some more work, honestly, because any single cup, even a venti iced coffee from Starbucks, putting in here flies back the second you step on the accelerator. Over here, glove box area, pretty decent sized, felt lined as well. But again, I wish that would be locking. At least they didn't put a button there to open it or close it. Again, the seats I mentioned are actually pretty generally quite comfortable. We have bolster support on the side with the 12-way adjustment there. The massage, heating, and ventilating, like we saw. Adjustable headrests, nice contrasting, like this piping as well, and lots of nice stitching. So these are actually quite comfortable. Same thing with all of our controls up here, are very easy to use for our giant panoramic glass roof. We have a sunglass holder over here as well, and if you will note, we have a digital rear view mirror, which you can make physical, but the view out back there is actually quite tiny because of the sloping roof line, so this actually comes in handy quite a lot and has never gone wrong. So I do like this quite a lot in the vehicle. We'll also note we have a Alcantara micro suede style headliner up here, which is very premium. So overall, I would say this interior is actually pretty good. It feels luxurious. It feels pretty nice in here generally. There's some ergonomic quirks. Otherwise, a lot of the stuff works really well. I think visibility is generally pretty good in the vehicle. We have nice big glass around us, nice big side mirrors. But let's go have a look at that passenger screen and see what you can do from over there. Okay, guys, hopping into the passenger section over here, let's have a look at this passenger display. Again, pretty quiet on this interior. And what can we do with this screen? It does still have that cool coating here. So if I go back to my driver area, you can't see it, which is nice. And there's a quick access button over here to turn it on and off easily. And as we saw back here, there is the HDMI port where you can plug stuff in as well. So I guess if you wanted to plug in like a switch or some other thing into here to watch something, you could do that, or play a game. I believe you can connect Bluetooth headphones to the screen as well. Some other fun stuff you can do in here is actually view the vehicle's cameras without interrupting the infotainment system. They're a little bit squished looking, but you can kind of dive through a whole bunch of the different camera views as well. So that's kind of cool if you are sitting in the passenger and you're bored. But when you open up that view, it then opens up the menu over here to then select the camera, which then shows up over there. So that's a little bit unusual, actually. Also on here, we can kind of look at the built-in navigation system as well. So let's see if that pulls up. That's cool. So we can kind of see that stuff as well. Pretty quick to respond on here as well, which is nice. And of course, like I said, you can connect different devices to here if you have like a USB stick or HDMI plugged in. It looks like we can connect to our audio, so Bluetooth, USB audio, or live radio. So unfortunately, there really isn't that much you can do with this passenger display. So as a passenger, I think I'm just gonna do this. Wait, there we go. Do this and honestly just relax, have a massage in the vehicle, and enjoy the ride, because this really cannot do too much for being a passenger screen. So on first notice, the thing you'll immediately notice is that it is very, very quiet in here. You're also going to notice you have the digital rear camera, which you can use or deactivate just really simply like that. But overall, it is pretty quiet in here. We have a lot of sound insulation, double pane glass, all that fun stuff. So it is pretty quiet in here, actually. I do like that about the vehicle. It does make it feel a little bit more luxurious. Coming to a stop, though, you're going to notice some interesting stuff. So depending on your regenerative braking settings here, We also have these really cool turning cameras here for both left and right indicators, which is pretty nice. So I do like that. You can disable that if you don't like it. The regen braking is a little bit funky, I will say. In minimum mode, I don't think it's aggressive enough, as some may say, and in max mode, it's, I think, too aggressive in some applications. So if we go over here, we're going to press electric vehicle right here. You see we have max and min. Max, it really does bring this vehicle to almost like a complete stop, but it doesn't fully stop the vehicle actually. So it kind of just slows you down really aggressively. It really comes on strong. In the minimum setting, it's a very light regen. Now you do have this ability to creep. So if you turn creep off and put it in max, it will come more to a complete stop than if not. But I actually like the creeping setting. It makes it feel a little bit more like a gas vehicle. Out here on smooth paved road, the suspension's actually pretty nice. It almost reminds me of the Lyriq in this aspect. It has this nice little glide to it actually, which is pretty nice. Now, I have read a lot of other reviews and stuff on this vehicle, and I did notice that over some smaller bumps, and specifically small like undulations and bumps on the road, it does kind of reverberate into the cabin just a little bit. It actually somehow does better over larger bumps. I think this has to do with the damping on the vehicle. It's a little bit stiffer than I would expect out of a more luxurious vehicle in this class, specifically the Cadillac Lyriq. So that's another thing I did notice on this all-new Wagoneer S. Overall, you know, it does a little bit of some stuff into the cabin. You kind of feel like your head and whole body bobbing around sometimes. So it is a little bit stiffer than a Lyriq, but still has some nice comfortness on it. It really shines, I would say, on the highway with the suspension. Steering-wise, it's just not there, and that's not what you really are expecting out of this vehicle. What is pretty impressive though is the acceleration. I leave it in auto mode most of the time, but it has 600 horsepower, guys. So even with the battery all the way down and around 23%, we still get pretty strong acceleration out of this vehicle. It does have some issues putting the power down, since both motors are putting out around the same 330-ish, 335 horsepower. So I think they could work a little bit on the management of the power between the front and rear. Steering itself is really light. Even with the sports steering on, there's practically no feel going on. We're gonna go over some bumps here. It actually handled that pretty well. It's just weirdly over the smaller bumps that you really get this jitter in the car that's a little bit unsettling here. And generally driving this vehicle, I think it's pretty fine. On the highway, and we're gonna experience this in a second right here, under load, under speed in a straight line, which I really was not expecting out of this car, is it kind of gets a little bit all over the place. It almost feels like the car is just like dancing a little bit. It doesn't feel like it's super stable in a straight line. That kind of concerned me a little bit. I have not really experienced that in too many vehicles, especially one with 600 horsepower. Just accelerating out here, it kind of feels like it's almost pulling over to the right a little bit, and you're on a little bit of some rougher pavement. It kind of feels like the car is just wobbling a little bit all over the place. So I would kind of like to see that improved a little bit, especially for a car with this much power. It is pretty quiet. There's really zero wind buffeting, which I think is quite nice. I think that's due to the aerodynamic efficiency of the car. And overall, I have noticed it coasts really well on the highway, which I do like about EVs. So we're just sitting on the highway, and it maintains its speed going downhill pretty well with very light regenerative braking. If I pop it into our eco mode, we get a little bit more boost of a range. Also have our adaptive driving system, which actually works pretty well. So adaptive cruise control is activated by this right switch on the button. I can turn on active driving assist and just set my speed, and voila, we are out on the highway with our active driving assistant on. It's not a full hands-free system. You do have to have some sort of touch on the steering wheel, and it is quiet on the highway and very smooth and comfortable. I think this excels really well as a road tripping highway vehicle. It's surprisingly efficient on the highway. This system works really well. It's really quiet, and with the massage, the ventilated seats, the heated seats, all of that works actually just well on the highway. So, and it's also not very off-road capable. It has around 6.4 inches of ground clearance. In sport mode, this thing melts its front tires to no avail, and so easily. It's honestly quite scary. It just spins and spins. All you hear is just tire screech up until around like 40-50 miles an hour. It's kind of crazy. It's just all that power is just going straight to the wheels. Really skinnier tires. I think they're just 235 width.
and square all around. So maybe a little more performance oriented tire would have been a little bit more suited for this amount of power in the vehicle. So guys, to wrap up our final drive impressions of the vehicle, it's an interesting one, and I'm going to wrap it up here with our parking assistance system here. So I'm going to press our P on our dash right here, and I'm going to drive by some spaces. We're going to see how it does with the parking assistant here, and then we'll kind of wrap up our stuff here. So it seems to be able to find spots actually without a car next to it. Stop vehicle, clicking the space. I want to reverse into it, I would say. So it says we have to press and hold the brake pedal and then press and hold the active park sense button for our entire maneuver. So let's press and hold our park sense button, take my foot off the brake. Now this is honestly the only vehicle I've ever experienced that makes you hold down a button the entire automatic parking engagement system here. So this is interesting. I do like though how it's finding spaces without a car next to it. A lot of the more advanced systems that don't have to have you hold a button typically need to have a car in a space for it to kind of see, and then kind of parks next to it. So I guess that's kind of cool that it can do that, but I don't like holding the button the whole time. I think just being aware of your surroundings a little bit more, maybe modulating the gas and the brake might have been a smarter solution here. But it did do it relatively quickly and without a car next to it. So I'm going to give it some props there, and it puts us into park. But to wrap up the week with the vehicle, it's interesting. This interior actually is a really strong highlight. It's a lot of great stuff going on here. Like I mentioned, the massage is just fantastic, but it's so early on in this both platform and vehicle's lifespans that I think there's a lot more still to come. So I am hopeful there. I hope they're hearing all this feedback and can make these changes, because they have a good foundation, and I think it's just going to get better hopefully down the road. As always, guys, thank you for joining me on yet another review over at Allcarnews, and make sure to like, subscribe, and comment, and stay tuned for more coming soon. Cheers.